Good afternoon, my fellow Malaysians. This is Dr. K.N. Singh from Johor Bahru, again to give you my thoughts on the Mufti Bill of 2024. In a multiracial and a multi-religious society like Malaysia, legislation should aim to effect and protect all its citizens equally. A religious specific bill might risk alienating non Muslims citizens, as this could be seen as preferential. Our unity and diversity of this country can be seriously affected eventually. The implementation of religious laws can sometimes lead to inconsistencies and misuse. Even in the Muslim community, here there are varied interpretations of Sharia, leading to confusion and conflicts as there is a potential for misinterpretation. There is an ongoing debate about the separation of religion and the state, and the advocates of civil law argue that it ensures fairness and equality without preference to any single religious viewpoint. As religious law tends to lean towards religion in which it is enacted. Such a bill might inadvertently infringe upon the rights and the freedom of individuals who do not follow the same religious beliefs, thus impacting their daily lives and personal choices. The Mufti bill affects Muslim rights the most. In a letter to the editor, which was published on the 10th of October 2024 in Free Malaysia Today by Latifa Koya, who was our first female head of MACC in the last government. She spelled out her concerns really well, which I echo as these are my thoughts exactly. She refers to the Mufti FT Bill 2024 and points out that this bill has very serious implications and consequences for Muslims in this country and can also affect the non-Muslims eventually. Firstly, Clause 4, bracket 1 of the bill makes the Mufti the chief authority on matters of Islamic law in federal territories next to the king. This derogates from the position of the king as the head of Islam in Malaysia, as is provided in Article 3, bracket 5 and Article 34, bracket 1 of the Federal Constitution. There really cannot be two chief authorities on Islamic matters in the federal territory. Under this new law, the Mufti can, through the issuance of binding fatwas, which can interfere in the daily life of Muslims and their right to practice their religion according to the Quran and Hadith. The Mufti is appointed on the advice of the minister. Therefore, the federal government, by choosing the right pawn, will obtain wide powers and authority over every aspect of religious practices of Muslims in this country once this Mufti bill becomes law. This role is purely religious and was never envisaged for the federal government under our constitution. It is against the basic structure of our constitution and thus makes it unconstitutional. The religious laws of any one religion cannot be put into the constitution of a multi-religious, multi-racial country. The mechanism of control is the unprecedented new type of fatwa provided in clause 11 of this bill, which prescribes that a fatwa issued by a mufti as the chairman of the National Fatwa Committee shall be binding on every Muslim. There is no exception or qualification. This is a huge departure from the current legal position of fatwas, where Section 34(3) states of the Administration of Islamic Law in the Federal Territories 1993 contains an exception for departure from a fatwa in matters of personal observance, belief, or opinion. In contrast, the edit of a mufti under the proposed bill's content is so ironclad that it cannot be challenged. Consequently, the offences that are already enumerated in the Sharia Criminal Offences FT Act of 1997 may be widened by the operation of the Mufti Bill to cover almost every aspect of a Muslim's social, economic, and political life. In other words, any fatwa on any aspect made by a mufti can potentially give rise to an offense under this act. Thus, this Mufti Bill will lead to an unfettered increase of the types or categories of offences enforceable against Muslims. All this has far-reaching consequences for the country. While this bill is confined to the federal territories, similar laws are bound to be adopted throughout the states. It will give power to the government through the Mufti to control or police every aspect of life of Muslims in this country. For example, what Muslims wear, where they eat, who they associate with, and how they interact with their fellow Malaysians may all be subject to such fatwas, which will be enforceable. No government should have such powers over its people in a democracy, purportedly under the guise of religion. To make things worse, by clause 8 bracket B, the Mufti may, on his own initiative without any direction from the Yang di-Pertuan Agong, issue fatwas. This is a blank check given to the Mufti, who is an unelected official to govern and direct the lives of Muslims. Clause 7 bracket 2 of the bill provides for a representative from the Attorney General's chambers, who is a Muslim, to sit in the Fatwa Committee. I mean, this is shocking to see such a clause in a federal bill presented by the government. It has been 67 years since Merdeka, and they are still trying to divide us by religion and race. It is a breach of Article 8 of the Federal Constitution for any appointment from a federal body such as the AG's chamber to be reserved for a person of a particular religion. It is also plainly absurd that the bill itself will be debated and voted upon by non-Muslim MPs in the Dewan Raya as well as Muslim MPs. I totally agree with Puan Latifah Koya's conclusion. This Mufti Bill poses a clear and a present danger to the right of all Muslims in Malaysia to practice their religion and carry out their daily lives without interference from the government or unelected religious officials. Those of you who have read Puan Latifah's letter to the editor will notice that many of my arguments have been taken from her views, as I concur, and she says it so much better legally than I ever could. So all of us should actually pay attention to what she says. I further urge the government to withdraw this bill for further consideration But if the government attempts to proceed with the reading and debate of the bill in the Dewan Riot again, MPs must in good conscience reject this bill overwhelmingly. I am appalled with the silence of DAP, which I cannot explain, as since they joined the government, they seem to have been muzzled. Sabah and Sarawak MPs are also very silent on the bill. Sabah and Sarawak are federal partners and need to show their feeling for the Mufti Bill. I am disappointed, and if the East Malaysian thinks that if things get bad, they can always leave the Federation, sorry, this is not an option. And their fellow Malaysians from Semenanjung expect them to help make a difference to the federal thinking, as we are all in this boat together. I am sure the people will show their displeasure at the next election in 2 years' time. I urge the MPs to act for the good of the people and uphold the Constitution as they have sworn to do as the voice of the people who elected them. Thank you for listening, and hope you will join me in my prayers that our MPs start thinking about the people who elected them, or we need to elect better MPs who will really think of the people in the next general election. Until we meet again, this is Dr. K.N. Singh from JB. Thank you.